All right, today we are moving on and moving away from those exponential word problems. We're going to start our trig unit. Again, the reason why we're still doing all this stuff is because a lot of you next year are going into Algebra 2, so you still have to know how to do all this stuff. So I don't want to skip out too much on new stuff, but we are slowing down all of that. Okay, so for rotating angles, so we're starting trig. So today we're going to do some angles stuff, some rotation stuff, and it's going to be a little bit of vocab today. Ignore the first part. First, I want you to go to initial and terminal side. The initial side, right, initial, this is the starting side of your angle. Right, initial is starting, right? We said that before, even last week when we were doing the exponential stuff. Terminal side, when you think of the word terminal or terminate, that means ending, right? A plane terminal, that's where you get off and your plane ride ends. The terminator, he ends lives, essentially. So the terminal side is the ending side of an angle. It's where you stop. Okay? Initial side's where you start. Terminal side is where you stop, if you prefer saying it like that. Now, if you head back up here, and you look at this, the two angles that I have, there we go. We have two different types of angles. On the left side, this is a positive angle. This is a positive angle. And the reason why this angle is considered positive is because it opens counterclockwise. It opens counterclockwise. But then on the right side, meaning that it opens this way, sorry. Counterclockwise is the opposite way that a clock moves. On the right side, this is considered a negative angle. This is considered a negative angle. And the reason why is because this one's opening this way. This opens clockwise, meaning in the direction that a clock would go, okay? So let me just show you initial and terminal side on each one. Your initial side's always going to be horizontal. So on this angle here, this is your initial side. This is where it starts, where your angle measurement starts, and then it opens, and this is where it stops. This is the terminal side, okay? And then this is called your vertex. Just so I can show you on a negative angle as well. This is horizontal. This is your initial side. And then it keeps opening until it stops. This is the terminal side. Okay, you really don't hear me talk too much about the initial side because that's going to be where it's going to be the same spot every single time. The terminal side is where your angle ends, okay? So angles in standard position, so this is, it's always going to be the case that we're going to talk about. We're never going to talk when it's not in standard position. So in order for it to be in standard position, this is talking about on a coordinate grid, so on like an X and Y axis. Your vertex, the turning point, let me just write this out. The turning point, or the vertex, if you want to call it the turning point, you can, is on the origin, always. And then the other thing for it to be in standard position, the initial side, so where you start, is on the positive side of the x-axis. Okay, so if we just look at what I just drew over here for a second, on the right, you have these axes. The vertex or the turning point is on the origin, right here in the middle. And then the initial side, so where you're starting, is always going to be on the positive side of the x-axis. So it's always going to look like that. And then what ends up happening is where you ending up is your terminal side. So if you're here, here, and then what direction you go in doesn't matter, okay? Also, before we move on, we know we have different quadrants, right? Quadrant 1 is in the upper right corner. We use Roman numerals to talk about them. So upper right corner is quadrant 1, and then you go counterclockwise. Quadrant 2 is in the upper left. Quadrant 3 is the bottom left. Quadrant 4 is in the bottom right. Okay? Next definition, quadrantal angles. A quadrantal angle is an angle whose terminal side, meaning where it stops, whose terminal side is on an axis. The x or the y-axis does not matter. And you already know some measurements. You already know some quadrantal angles. I know you do because you all took geometry last year. If you look at this first set of axes, let's talk about our first quadrantal angle, the first one that comes to mind. We're always going to start off this way, right? Because this is in standard position. Vertex is the origin, initial sides on the right. So in my first one, my first quadrantal angle is if I go straight up here. So we're only going to talk about positive angles for right now, for the next 2 minutes. You know this angle is a right angle. This is 90 degrees. Your first quadrantal angle that you probably thought of was 90 degrees. The next one would be if it ends over here. You have to say which way you're opening up, right? Because you have to say whether it's positive or negative. This is 180 degrees. The next one would be down here. You open counterclockwise, you get 270 degrees. And then the last one over here would be if you go all the way around and you end up on the same side where you started, right? If your initial side and your terminal side are on the same spot, this is 360 degrees. And then you can keep going around. So the way you would do so is just by adding 90, right? If your angle is divisible by 90, that means that it is a quadrantal angle. Okay? Next definition, last definition for today. Coterminal angles. Coterminal angles are angles who share a terminal side. Angles who share a terminal side. If you want to put in parentheses, co-terminal, when you think of the word co, right, if you have a co-captain or a co-teacher, that means that whatever it is that you're doing it together. Co means together. Terminal, before we said, means end. So if you want to write this definition, you can. Angles who end, they end together. They end in the same spot. They might have gone different directions to get there, but they still end in the same spot. So let me show you one example. Let's talk about 90 degrees. 90 degrees, we know, you start this way. Always are going to start that way. And you're right there. Right? Let's say I don't write the direction it's opening up, even though you should. This angle measurement, do it in blue. This angle measurement, the initial side is the same, and so is the terminal side. But now we can talk about the path that it took to get there. This opened up this way. This went a positive 90 degrees. However, the blue angle, let's say that we started here and we went around clockwise. That means that my angle direction has to be negative. It's a quadrantal angle. You went around 3 times. This is negative 270 degrees. Okay, so the way that you find coterminal angles, let me give you another example. If I give you this, we'll say this is, we'll just call it 30 degrees, right? This is 30 degrees. What you could have done to get there right? This is where you're starting still. this is where you're going to end up. Let's say that you went around the positive direction a full 360 and then you went another 30. So that would be 360 plus 30 is 390 degrees. So I want you to make two notes here. The first thing I want you to write, let me move this so that you can actually see it. Okay, the first thing that I want you to write for coterminal angles underneath, aside from the definition, is that there's an infinite number of coterminal angles. So part of your homework, I'm going to ask you to name a coterminal angle. You may not have the same number that I have on the answer key when I post it, but that doesn't mean that you're wrong. Coterminal, not coterminus. Coterminal angles. The other thing I want you to write, because you can just keep going around the circle. The other thing that I want you to write is that in order to find a coterminal angle, all you have to do is add or subtract 360 to the original. Okay, so you either go around the circle again, or you go by subtracting 360, right, negative, you're going in the other direction, okay, but it's still going to end up in the same spot. So let's just look at this on the bottom now. This is what your homework's going to look like, okay? I'll show you where I'm getting my information from. Graph each angle on the set of axes, then state which quadrant the terminal side falls in, and find two coterminal angles. On your homework, I'm only going to ask you to find one, okay? So for number one, 225. 225 is in between 180 and 270. Okay? It's about 45 away from each one. So it's right smack in the middle right here. So you want to say you're starting here. You have to draw this. And then you're ending right in the middle, and you have to say what direction you opened up. So we are in quadrant 3. Okay, one more time. I know that 225 is in between 180 and 270. I'm opening counterclockwise because it's positive. Okay, in between 180 and 270, it's about halfway in between each one. So I draw it right in the middle. You are really just sketching, not specifically graphing. You're not using a protractor or anything. So these can be just rough drawings. It's not a big deal. So we're in quadrant 3. A coterminal angle, I'm going to write down 2. So 225, if I take 225 and I subtract 360, that gives me negative 135 degrees. Now, this is not what the question's asking me. I just want to show you. Negative 135 degrees would be if you're starting here, right, just like always, and you're ending, you go back 90, and then you go back a little bit more right here. You see how this and this, they have the same terminal side? It looks like the same angle. The only thing that's different is that little circle that I drew in the middle to show which direction we opened up. So one coterminal angle is negative 135 degrees. Again, your homework's only going to ask you for one, so you don't have to do this twice. And then another coterminal angle would be if I have 225 and I add 360. That gives me 585 degrees. So that's another one. Now for your homework, I'm only asking you for one. So it could be either one of these, or it could be if you keep adding 360 or keep subtracting 360 if you really want to. Now 585, I'm just going to show you. It has the same initial side, they all do, and it's going to have the same terminal side, meaning it stops in the same spot. The path that this one took, it went around the circle once, so that's 360, and then went another 225 degrees. Okay? Now number 2, a little different because it's a negative angle. So we're going to start here, just like always. You start this way. Now for negative, we're going to open down, meaning we're going to open clockwise. So if we go down this amount, right? Don't write this. If you go down this amount, you are going down 90. To go from 90 to 150, you have to go another 60 degrees. So this is your negative 90. This is negative 180. Right? It's the same amount, it's just opening in a different direction. So 180 and negative 180, they end in the same spot. Those are coterminal angles, okay? But anyway, negative 150 is in between negative 180 and negative 90. It's closer though to negative 180. So again, that's not your angle. It's closer to negative 180. So I'm going to draw an angle that's just a little bit closer to negative 180. I show the direction that it opened up in, okay? The quadrant that it falls in, so again, where your terminal side is, this is in quadrant, also in quadrant 3, okay? One coterminal angle, again, you're only going to have to do one on your homework, is if I do negative 150 minus 360. Negative 150 minus 360 would be negative 510. So negative 510 degrees ends in the same spot. Another coterminal angle would be if I did negative 150 plus 360. And that would be 210 degrees. Okay, let me just show you. So 210 degrees is another one. Let me just show you the 210. 210 is in between 180 and 270. It's positive, so that's why I'm going around the positive direction. It's closer to 180 than it is to 270. You see how the terminal side here matches this one up here? The only difference is the path that it took to get there. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions. Your homework will be posted tomorrow, but both things are due at midnight. Have a good day.